They didn't just laugh at me, they pitied me. While they toasted my brother's law firm, I was the family embarrassment with a worthless do-gooder hobby. Mom once whispered, "She still thinks that website matters. Poor thing." They uninvited me from the biggest day of his career, said, "No one wants you there, Tori. Don't make it awkward." So I sat in the corner anyway, hiding until one powerful lawyer stared straight at me and asked, "You're the founder of that education platform. My daughter swears by it." And suddenly, I wasn't invisible anymore. My name is Tori. And for as long as I can remember, I've believed in one thing. Education should be a right, not a privilege. I grew up in a middle-class suburb where success had a very specific look: straight-A report cards, internships at law firms, and dinner parties where everyone name-dropped Ivy League schools like accessories. My brother Dean fit right into that mold. I didn't. While Dean chased prestige and titles, I was volunteering at the community center, tutoring kids who couldn't even afford their own pencils. I still remember one boy, Jamal. He was bright, so bright, but had never owned a textbook. He used to copy notes from a neighbor's old workbook because his family couldn't afford new ones. That image stuck with me. In college, while my peers were prepping for consulting jobs and bar exams, I was building something, quietly, alone. A free online platform where students, especially those in underserved areas, could access notes, study guides, and tutorials for free. I called it BrightPath. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't monetized. But it was mine. I wrote every line of code myself, often in the dead of night. I learned to design the site from YouTube tutorials. I answered every user question, moderated forums, begged educators to upload resources. It was exhausting, but it gave me purpose. No one in my family took it seriously. At dinner, when I tried to share milestones, we just hit 10,000 users, or a school in rural Montana adopted our platform. I'd be met with forced smiles and quick subject changes. My mom once said, "That's sweet honey. But when are you getting a real job?" Dean, on the other hand, was the golden boy. He graduated top of his class from law school and opened his own boutique firm straight out of school, thanks in large part to Dad's connections. My parents hosted a huge celebration for his launch. Full catering champagne, even custom party favors with his firm's logo on them. When I asked if I could invite a few of the students I mentored to talk about how BrightPath helped them, my dad actually laughed. "Tori, this isn't one of your charity events," he said. "Let's keep things professional, shall we?" That stung. Over time, I stopped trying to explain what I was building. They didn't care. They thought I was playing around on the internet. To them, BrightPath was just some pet project I'd eventually grow out of. I remember one Thanksgiving dinner where Dean was talking about a high-profile client he had just signed. Everyone was buzzing. My aunt clutched her wine glass and said, "Isn't it amazing what ambition can do?" Then she looked at me and added, "You were always the soft one, Tori. The dreamer, as if dreaming was a flaw." I lived in a tiny apartment, surviving on freelance gigs and donations from kind strangers who believed in the mission. I wasn't making money, but I was making a difference. BrightPath was reaching rural schools in Idaho, reservations in New Mexico, inner-city classrooms in Detroit. I'd get emails from teachers and students saying I passed my exam because of this site, or "Your platform helped my son feel like he could learn again." But those voices didn't matter at home. My parents would brag about Dean's expanding office downtown, and his newest luxury client. When someone asked what I was up to, Mom would say, "She's still doing that website thing." Her voice always trailed off, like it was embarrassing to admit. Once during a family barbecue, my cousin's husband asked how much revenue my platform brought in. When I told him it was donation-based and mostly free, he scoffed. "So, a hobby." Dean laughed. Tori's always had a soft spot for lost causes. I went to the bathroom and cried. It was like living with blinders on. I could see what BrightPath was doing, how real it was, how powerful. But my family refused to see me as anything but the underachiever, the emotional one who never grew up. I didn't fit their mold, and in their eyes, that made me invisible. But I never stopped building, never stopped believing in what BrightPath could be, even when it hurt, even when I felt alone. I wasn't looking for validation. I just wanted to help people learn to make things a little easier for kids like Jamal. But what I didn't know was that someone important had noticed. And he was about to walk into my brother's big day and change everything. The real shift happened the day Dean's firm landed its first major corporate client. He called it a landmark contract, some tech-adjacent conglomerate that needed legal restructuring across multiple states. It was all jargon to me, but to my family, it was pure gold. The way they reacted, you'd think he'd just been nominated for a Nobel Prize. Mom couldn't stop beaming. "This is it, Dean," she said, touching his arm like he was royalty. "This puts you in a whole different league." They planned a celebration. Not too flashy, Dean said, but of course it involved a formal venue, an open bar, and a catered dinner. The firm's partners would be there along with clients and legal press. My parents were practically giddy. Me. I heard about the event through my cousin's Instagram story. I texted Dean asking if I should RSVP. His reply was short. "It's mostly a corporate crowd, Tori. Wouldn't be your scene." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The message was clear I wasn't wanted. But Mom called later just to twist the knife. "Tori, honey, don't take this the wrong way, but maybe sit this one out. You know how you get at these things so sensitive. We don't want any awkwardness." Awkwardness, I'd been nothing but polite. I'd kept quiet while they dismissed my work, swallowed my pride every time they laughed behind my back. And now I was being told I'd ruin the optics of Dean's big night just by showing up. It wasn't just about the event. It was a pattern. Every time my brother achieved something, they rolled out the red carpet. When I hit milestones with BrightPath partnerships with small districts, organic growth in underprivileged areas, they'd barely blink. "You should apply for a real grant," Dad once said. "Maybe then people would actually notice your site." As if 50,000 active users didn't count as people. The week before Dean's celebration, I received an email from a guidance counselor in rural Oregon. She said BrightPath had helped her students raise their test scores by over 30%. She attached pictures, kids holding handwritten signs that said, "Thank you, BrightPath." I printed one and put it on my wall, just to remind myself why I started. The day of Dean's party, I stayed home, or at least I meant to. I sat on my couch in sweats, eating cereal, scrolling through photos of the event. Dean in a navy suit, my parents dressed to the nines, my aunts and uncles posing like paparazzi. Then I saw a tag, "Can't wait to meet the whole firm team tonight, including family." Something inside me snapped. I got dressed, Nothing fancy, just a clean blouse, slacks, my old laptop bag slung over my shoulder like always. I wasn't going to make a scene. I just wanted to be there, even if I sat in the back. When I arrived, no one noticed me at first. I stood near the entrance, watching my family laugh at a table sipping champagne like they were in some elite club I never got invited to. Then I caught my mom's eye. Her expression dropped. She walked over quickly, her smile stiff. "Tori, what are you doing here?" "I wanted to support Dean," I said quietly. She hesitated. "Well, we just didn't think this kind of event would appeal to you." "I'll stay out of the way," I said. "I promise." She sighed, then gestured toward the far end of the room. "Fine, just don't draw attention, okay?" This is Dean's night, so I sat, alone, in a corner. They had me seated near the catering staff next to the kitchen doors, as far from the main tables as physically possible. I watched my family laugh and toast, as if I didn't exist. No one came over. No one introduced me. I pulled out my laptop, mostly to avoid eye contact. I logged into BrightPath, answered a few user messages, reviewed a teacher's lesson submission. That's when I noticed a sharply dressed man scanning the room. He looked like a senior partner, gray suit, expensive watch, confident posture. His eyes landed on me. He tilted his head, curious. He walked over. "Excuse me," he said. "Is that a Gen 4 laptop?" I nodded, surprised. Anyone noticed? Not many people still use those. Solid machine. Great for building code. You in IT. I smiled faintly. Kind of. I run a platform called BrightPath. It's an open access resource site for students. He blinked. Wait. BrightPath, as in brightpath.org. Yes. He stared at me like I'd just revealed I was Beyoncé. My daughter uses that site every night. She's in 8th grade. Math used to make her cry. Now she's getting B's. You built that. I nodded again. Unsure what to say? He looked over his shoulder toward Dean's table. Your brother told me his sister was in tech, but he didn't mention this. I followed his gaze, heart thudding. He turned back to me, smiling. Can I say, I have some questions about your scalability model. In that moment, I realized something. The people who mattered, the ones who saw value in what I built, weren't at my family's table. They were walking through the doors I opened all by myself. After that night, everything shifted. The man in the gray suit, his name was Richard Langston, turned out to be a senior counsel for one of the most prestigious education foundations in the country. A week after the party, he emailed me directly. He wanted to explore ways his foundation could help scale BrightPath, not just with money, but with policy support, public school partnerships, and international reach. It felt surreal. I reread the email 3 times before believing it was real. Then I sat on my bed and cried, not because I was overwhelmed, but because it was the first time someone powerful, someone who had no reason to sugarcoat anything, saw the value in what I built. No condescension, no forced smiles, just respect. When I told my parents, they reacted like I'd said I got a free sandwich at Subway. That's nice, honey, Mom said, stirring her coffee. But don't get too excited. These rich guys always promise things and disappear, Dad nodded. They probably just want to pick your brain and steal your ideas. Be careful. And that was that. No celebration, no champagne, no family dinner. I didn't even bother telling Dean. But the meetings with Langston's team kept happening via Zoom email, even an in-person session at their headquarters. They connected me with their tech accelerator, offered a grant proposal coach, and helped me refine BrightPath's pitch for large-scale funding. I wasn't just building a passion project anymore. I was building a movement. But while BrightPath began to rise, so did the tension at home. At Sunday dinner, 2 weeks later, Dean brought up the Langston Foundation. Of course, he heard about it through his firm's network. So he said, sipping wine with that smug little grin, "I heard you're trying to partner with the Langston Group now." Didn't realize they were in the charity game. I looked up from my plate. They're actually an education equity organization. They support scalable tech solutions for underserved communities. He snorted. Right. So, they're giving handouts to hobby sites. My fork froze midair. It's not a hobby, I said. We're at over 120,000 active users. Teachers are uploading materials daily. We're onboarding district-level admins. That's not a hobby. Dean shrugged. Relax. I'm just saying, don't get ahead of yourself. Langston helps startups all the time. Doesn't mean you've made it. Dad laughed along. I mean, she still works in her pajamas half the day. Can't be that serious. The room chuckled. I swallowed hard, and that's when something in me cracked. You know what's funny? I said, setting down my fork. If I were a man, say if Dean here were running BrightPath, you'd all be throwing a damn parade. The room went silent. Every time I get closer to something real, you all act like I'm playing pretend. But when Dean printed business cards, you had a steak dinner, Tori. Mom tried to interrupt. No, I said louder than I meant to. I've done everything on my own. No interns, no loans, no office, just me and a $300 laptop. You all love to mock. And still, somehow I've made something that actually helps people. Dean leaned back, smug and defensive. So we're the villains now, huh? I'm not asking you to worship me, I said. But maybe, just maybe, you could stop treating me like the family disappointment. No one replied. I stood up. My hands were shaking. I'm done playing the quiet one, I said. If you can't support me, fine. But you don't get to belittle me while pretending you love me. And with that, I left. After that dinner, I stopped showing up. No more family brunches. No more texts. I needed space, and I needed to breathe. It was freeing, but lonely. Until one day, Langston's assistant called with a surprise. We'd like you to present BrightPath at the National Education Innovation Forum in Chicago, she said. I nearly dropped my phone. It was the biggest platform in the field. Tech leaders, educators, policymakers, and investors all in one room. I'd be one of 6 presenters. I'd get 12 minutes on stage. I said yes, of course. Then I panicked. What was I going to wear? How should I pitch? Would anyone take me seriously? But I pushed through. I hired a coach, practiced every day, and built the cleanest deck I could manage. I even got a blazer. When I stepped on that stage, everything else disappeared. My voice didn't shake. My slides worked. My final line, education should be a right, not a luxury, got a standing ovation. Afterward, 2 investors approached me. One was from a venture fund that specifically backed women in tech. The other offered an operations grant for expansion. I could barely believe it. And yet, when I called Mom to share the news, she barely listened. Well, that's great, honey, she said. But you know your brother just got featured in Legal Monthly, right? I hung up before she finished. Something inside me turned cold. They were never going to see me. Not really, unless they were forced to. The opportunity came faster than expected. Langston's team arranged a formal investment agreement complete with a legal review process. I'd need counsel to finalize terms, handle compliance, and advise on IP protections. I knew Dean's firm specialized in corporate law, and for once, I wasn't desperate. I had options, but I also saw a chance. I emailed him. I need legal counsel for an upcoming deal. You're one of several firms I'm considering. If you're interested, send over your standard engagement letter by Friday. He replied the next day. Didn't realize you were going big time. We'd be happy to discuss terms. Let me loop in our partners. Game on. A week later, I walked into his firm's conference room, no longer the outsider sister, but a potential client. I wore that same blazer from the Chicago event. My slides were cleaner now, my posture stronger. Dean greeted me with his usual slick charm, but there was something else in his eyes' caution. We went over terms. I asked sharp questions. I pushed back on fees. I used language he didn't expect me to know. After an hour, he finally said, "You've really grown into this." I smiled. "No, I was always this. You just never looked close enough." He blinked. That night, I got an email from one of his partners. "We'd love to work with BrightPath. Also, off the record, I use your site for my son. It's changed how he learns." That one hit deep. They'd been using my platform this whole time, quietly, privately, benefiting from what I built while mocking me to my face. The next time my family hosted dinner, I didn't plan to go, but something told me I should, so I showed up. Dean was there, so were my parents. They looked surprised to see me, but I didn't wait for permission. I sat down, smiled, and said, "I'm expanding BrightPath to 5 new states next quarter. We're closing our first funding round this month." Silence. Then Dad said, "That's impressive." I nodded. "And I'll need legal help for international licensing." Dean looked up cautious. "Do you want us to draft something?" "No," I said. "You'll be implementing what I draft. My counsel already handled strategy. You're just executing." His jaw clenched. Mom forced a smile. "That's wonderful, Tori." I leaned in slightly. "You know it's funny. The same girl you called too sensitive just got invited to brief the Department of Education next month." Their smiles faded, and for the first time in years, I felt tall. Not because I proved them wrong, but because I no longer needed to. 2 weeks after that dinner, I got a call from Richard Langston himself. "Tori," he said, his voice warm and purposeful, "we'd like you to be the keynote speaker at our annual Future of Learning Summit in D.C. It's an event for policymakers, donors, and education leaders. We want BrightPath front and center." My breath caught. Me, the girl with the $300 laptop and a living room desk. Keynote speaker. "Yes," I said, my voice steady. "I'd be honored." But that wasn't even the twist. Because the 3 days before the summit, I received an updated agenda, and right there, under the section for panel digital tools for equity in education, was the name Dean Sullivan Esquio as one of the guest legal advisors discussing regulatory impacts on tech startups. My brother. I laughed out loud when I saw it. Apparently his firm had taken on several edtech clients recently, and the panelists were chosen based on legal experience in the field. The organizers hadn't realized we were siblings, they just booked based on credentials. And Dean, as always, was eager to be seen. Oh, he had no idea what he was walking into. I didn't warn him. I didn't even hint at it. The morning of the event, I walked into the green room backstage at the Hilton Grand. A few people were already prepping, finalizing notes, sipping coffee. Then the door opened, and in walked Dean, holding a leather binder and adjusting his cufflinks. When he saw me, he froze. Tori. I smiled calm and razor sharp. Morning. His eyes flicked to my name tag, then to the event badge that said keynote speaker. You're speaking, I am. He hesitated. Keynote. I nodded, then sipped my coffee. You'll be panel 3, right after lunch. Try to keep the audience awake. I left him standing there. The keynote went better than I ever imagined. The ballroom was packed. I spoke about the digital divide, the impact of open access platforms, and the teachers in rural Kentucky who cried when they found BrightPath had lesson plans aligned to state standards for free. I ended with, sometimes the people closest to us don't believe in our vision, but when strangers across the country say your work changed their lives, you realize belief is optional. Impact isn't. Standing ovation, again. By the time Dean stepped onto the panel, the entire room already knew my name. I watched from the back as he stuttered through answers, visibly sweating. When one moderator mentioned the rise of platforms like BrightPath, he visibly flinched. After the panel, donors and educators came up to me in waves. Some asked for collaborations. Others just wanted to say thank you. Meanwhile, Dean packed up quickly and slipped out through the side door. But karma wasn't done. A week later, I got a call from a major national nonprofit. They wanted to award BrightPath a 7-figure grant, one that required formal legal compliance, nonprofit incorporation, and strategic contracting. Langston's team had already prepped the application. All we needed now was airtight legal work, and I knew exactly who would deliver it. I emailed Dean's firm. Subject contract execution and grant partnership, urgent. To whom it may concern. BrightPath requires final review and filing for a national-level funding agreement. Your firm has been selected to handle this process under the direct supervision of Mr. Dean Sullivan Escuro. All drafts must reflect the founder's final language, and timeline adherence is non-negotiable. Please confirm acceptance. 2 hours later, Dean called. You're serious about this? I didn't blink. You said you wanted to help startups. Well, now you get to file paperwork for the girl whose laptop you laughed at. Silence. Then, you really don't want another lawyer to do this? Oh, I do, I said, smiling. But I want you to experience what it feels like to follow my lead. You said I was a joke. Let's make it official in writing. He sighed. Tori, but I was already done. 3 weeks later, Dean showed up to my office. Yes, my actual office now. We'd signed a lease with part of the grant funds. It wasn't big, but it had clean desks, whiteboards, and interns who believed in what we were building. Dean sat at the table, reviewing contracts, while I marked notes on a whiteboard beside him. I didn't rub it in. I didn't need to. The roles spoke for themselves. He was the implementer. I was the architect. As he finished signing the last page, he looked up. You really did it. I didn't smile. No thanks to you. He nodded, slowly. You know, We were wrong about you. You were wrong. I never doubted me. His eyes softened. Can we start over? I looked at the signed agreement in my hands. No, I said, but we can move forward with clear terms. He nodded again. And that was it. Not revenge in flames. Not a big takedown. Just power reversed. I didn't need to destroy them. I just needed to build so high they had no choice but to look up. A month later, we hosted our first Bright Path community event, a live workshop for educators and students, streamed across 6 states. The event was held at the public library downtown, the same one I used to sit in for hours as a teenager dreaming up ideas nobody cared to hear. Now it was packed. Teachers, parents, donors, reporters, and right up front a row saved for family of the founder. They came, my parents, even Dean. I hadn't asked them to. I didn't need to. They just showed up, quiet, watching. I stepped on stage as the final speaker. I didn't talk about the pain. I didn't talk about being left out or mocked or dismissed. I talked about the kids in Pine County who got their first science fair win because of free templates on our site. The teacher who sent a video of her students jumping up and down because they finally had resources that didn't require a school budget. And I ended with this. Sometimes the people who love us don't know how to believe in something they can't see. But that doesn't mean we stop building. It means we build anyway. So that one day, when they finally open their eyes, they'll see something undeniable. When I stepped down, the crowd rose in applause. And for the first time, I saw my parents, really saw them standing, clapping. My dad's eyes misted. My mom's hand was over her heart. They didn't say anything. They didn't have to, because now the silence wasn't judgment. It was awe. And maybe that's the sweetest kind of revenge, becoming undeniable on your own terms.